Hello there, you're watching the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. In the next half hour, we'll see what's making the headlines with the Daily Mirror's political editor, John Stevens, and barrister and former government minister, Anna Soubry. So let's see what is on some of those front pages. Well, the Metro leads with the continuing calls to exonerate thousands of sub-postmasters who were convicted as part of the Post Office Horizon IT scandal. That's after the Prime Minister said the government was working to clear their names. The Mail says pressure is growing on the government to compensate all those wrongly accused after the scandal was thrust back into the spotlight following a recent ITV mini-series. The Guardian claims a senior Conservative MP has warned his party faces obliteration at the next election after leaving the country in a worse state than they inherited it in 2010. Monday's Financial Times says federal investigators in the U.S. have launched a probe into how a section of a new Boeing 737 MAX 9 jet blew out mid-flight earlier this week. And the features an exclusive plea from the director, Idris Elba, who is launching a campaign alongside the paper to call for more action to prevent knife crime. The Express also splashed on a campaign. They feature Esther Ranson's plea for the public to get urgently behind the paper's bid to force a commons debate on assisted dying. And the Daily Star has a weather warning for us. They say a 12-day chill and whiteouts are on the way from Scandinavia. And a reminder that by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the program, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's papers while you watch us. Well, we are joined tonight by the Daily Mirror's political editor, John Stevens, and barrister and former government minister, Anna Soubry. Thank you both so much for being with us. OK, let's start with a story that's on the front page of the Metro, but that really has been touched on by a lot of newspapers and that's been talked about a lot over the past few days, arguably a few decades. So here's the headline: Post Office victims will get justice. This is Rishi Sunak saying it is going to take steps to exonerate the many victims. Anna, what do you make of what Rishi Sunak is saying in the story in general?
Well, this sounds like good news. I think my concern with all of this is that we know that around 900 of these people were convicted, wrongly convicted, because of the failings of this computer. And they were falsely accused, basically, of being thieves. And they weren't. And they were wrongly convicted. But it's not just this 900. There were many more also accused and were being told by the Post Office, who've behaved atrociously in all of this, to pay back the money. So the victims extend way beyond the 900 that were falsely convicted. Parliament can sort that out. There'll be a method of doing that. But these people not only need their convictions, obviously, quashing, they also need proper compensation and quickly. But so do all the others. And I tell you what I would do. I would switch, if you like, the onus onto the Post Office. I would assume that everybody who's a sub-postmaster or mistress has been treated badly by the Post Office, and the burden, if you like, is on them now to prove that they didn't cause some injustice to all those people. Put it back on the Post Office, speed it up and get proper justice.
Because also now that the TV drama is aired, there's a lot of people coming forward that perhaps hadn't come forward before. Well, what do you make of it, John?
Well, I think there is going to be a lot of pressure, as Anna says, tomorrow when MPs are back from their Christmas break. David Davis is quoted in one of the papers here saying there is a tidal wave of public support. And I think anyone who watched that drama over Christmas just saw the absolute devastating effect that this has on people, that these were people who were, you know, the leaders of the community, people who were really trusted, and then had publicly had their lives destroyed. People who didn't even feel able to leave their own homes because they would worry that people would be judging them. I mean, the effect that it had was absolutely enormous. And it is great that this TV drama has sparked this wave of action, and we are expecting the government to take these steps. Rishi Sunak was obviously asked about it this morning when he was on TV. But as some of the victims have said, it has been such slow progress. The guy called Lee Castleton, who was one of the people played in that drama on ITV, was on TV this morning saying it's been like a war, and it's just been step after step after step. And so, yeah, some of these people have had their convictions quashed, but there's still hundreds more who haven't. Yes. And there are so many people who are owed compensation for this. And I was looking at the figures earlier on the government website. I think it's about 20 or so who've had their full and final offer of compensation sorted. But there are hundreds more. And so I think the hope is now that the government do just get on with this and start making sure that people do get the money they're owed.
I mean, obviously, this has been going on for decades, like we were saying, but do you think there is a chance it could reflect badly, specifically on Rishi Sunak, that it would tie in with the election year in any way or not?
No, unless he fails to grasp the nettle and make proper progress. You can't criticise Sunak. I would say this as a former business minister. I think it's too quick and too easy just to blame politicians. I think lots and lots of people are to blame, if you like. But notably, it's Fujitsu who had this computer system. It's the Post Office. They brought the prosecutions. And they never sort of thought, God, there's an awful lot of our people who don't seem to be doing things properly. And probably it seems they're being dishonest. So I'd put it back on the Post Office, assume everybody's a victim. Because a lot of these people will not come forward for the reasons that John says. A lot of them have just gone away and got on with the rest of their lives somehow.
And the scandal does keep getting worse. There's this story on the front page of The Guardian saying that before this Horizon IT scheme got rolled out across the whole country, it was tested out in a few hundred branches in the northeast of England. This was back in 1995 and 1996. And there were problems then. 2 postmasters at least were prosecuted, were accused of stealing. It was obvious there was some sort of a glitch in the system, or if it wasn't obvious, it should have been.
Exactly.
And yet they continued to roll it out everywhere. And all of these people, when they rang up the helpline and said, I've got a problem here, my numbers aren't adding up, they were told, oh, it's just you.
You know, I did an interview on Sky News with the son of one of the victims. The point he was making is that they all felt isolated because you just thought it was just you and you didn't necessarily want to ask or advertise the fact. So obviously a story that we will keep on talking about. Let's go to the Financial Times front page there. And I guess the picture says it all. When it pops up, there it is, not over yet. High water levels across flooded regions pose further risks in coming days. John.
Yeah, so this is yet more criticism for the government, this time on flooding. Labour saying that Rishi Sunak's been asleep at the wheel. We have seen the awful impact that these floods have had in different parts of the country, but it feels like every time this time of year, we come back to this sort of thing, and we all know the stories about climate change, how we're going to start seeing these problems more and more. And I think there are big questions for the government on what exactly are they doing. There's been a few reports out over the last few months about how the different storm systems, whether that's like pipe overflows or flood barriers, how a lot of those aren't in a great state. And this is exactly the sort of thing that we need to be investing in if we're going to have more of this bad weather.
Yeah, I mean, you took your cameras to Loughborough, which is very near to where I live. And there's a village near us, literally down the road, called Corn. And they had extraordinary levels of flooding. They've never had it that high. I am told by people who live in that village that Severn Trent turned up, emptied, cleared out all the drains, and the water went overnight. So we are going to get these extreme weather events. And I'm afraid one of the things that hasn't happened is that we're not having that maintenance of ditches, of the drainage systems, the drains and culverts and all the rest of it. And a lot of that comes back to cuts that have been made during my watch when I was a member of the Conservative Party and member of government. But these are the consequences for a lot of councils, is they don't have the resources. And we all know the failings of too many of the water companies to make sure that they are doing the things that they should be doing.
Absolutely. Let's go to The Guardian now. Front page there, main story. Top Tory says party faces obliteration in the election. This is Danny Kruger. Anna, tell us what's in the story and exactly what he's saying and what you make of it.
Well, this is I find this fascinating. Danny Kruger apparently is a top Tory. He's been there at least 4 years. But anyway, it's not the point. I don't think he's ever been a PPS, never mind a minister, but he's apparently a top Tory. But it's what he says that's most important. And what he says, which, I mean, Rishi Sunak and his gang will read this with absolute horror, because the last thing you want is for this sort of headline where somebody who's meant to be important, doesn't matter whether he is or not, but he says it faces obliteration in the election. And even more extraordinary, he goes on to say that our country is less sadder, I'd agree, less united. Well, Mr Kruger and his ilk might want to look at their style of politics as to why our country isn't as united as we were, and less conservative. Well, obviously, that's a matter of opinion. But, I mean, this is just the sort of headline you don't want. as you're going into that election year.
John.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a few more things coming up in the next year, which is going to make it even less united. Obviously, we've got the election at some point on the horizon, but tomorrow there's going to be a vote on Parliament on new oil and gas licences.
Yes. Yeah.
We know that Tory MP Chris Skidmore, who used to be a minister, on Friday, he said, I've had enough. I'm no longer going to have the Tory whip. I'm going to step down as an MP. It's possible that other Tory MPs don't step down, but speak out against what the government's doing, possibly vote against it. You've also got that row over the Rwanda bill that we had before Christmas. It got put on a shelf, but that's all going to come out in the open again. And it will be people like Danny Kruger who are the ones pushing the government on that. And then before you've got all of those things, you've also got the threat of more by-elections now. So we've got that one, Chris Skidmore in Kingswood. We've got the possibility of Scott Benton in Blackpool South and Peter Bone in Wellingborough. So that's at least 3, possibly even more. So it's a drip of bad news for the government.
And you'll have some MPs announcing that they will not be standing Conservatives at the next election. That's going to come out, because it's got to come out, because they've got to select the candidates, because we know that obviously there's going to be a general election. It could still be a May one. So I think all round there's going to be lots of bad news.
So you think there could still be a May one, a spring one?
Well, I wouldn't rule out anything.
Yeah, because last week, I mean, Rishi Sunak came out and he said it's his working assumption it will be the second half of the year. I mean, that was dampening down speculation without properly ruling it out. And I think if you got to, what date we're having the budget, the 6th of March, if you do that, you announce loads of tax cuts, and that is finally something that does start to change the opinion polls, you could see the Tories thinking, well, hang on, mate, this might be our chance.
And you've also got May elections, you've got the council elections.
Exactly.
And if you're short of bodies to go out and campaign for you, then a great time to do it is when you've got local elections, because your council candidates will also come out.
And if you get disastrous results, then, you could...
And disastrous results are a dreadful way to then try and bounce back to an October, November type election.
We'll keep on speculating on a possible date until it's
announced.
Drive all the viewers. Exactly. Sorry. John and Anna, stay with us. We'll take a look at some of the other stories, including this story on the front of the Daily Star, as they warn that things are about to get chilly. Welcome back. You're watching the press preview. With me once again are John Stevens and Anna Soubry. OK, let's go straight to the front page of the Daily Express. A sad story here, and it's Esther Ranson. It says, Esther's plea to the nation, signed petition for patients like me. And she's asking for the public to get behind an Express petition demanding the Commons debate the whole issue of assisted dying. John.
Yeah, so this has been one of the stories that's really captured the nation's attention over the Christmas period, is Esther Ranson talking so bravely about the awful disease that she's got and how she's joined Dignitas and how she thinks that people like her facing terminal illnesses should face the option of assisted suicide. And what she's calling for here, or what the Express is calling for, is for a Commons debate on the issue. I think that possibly what's needed here is not necessarily just a Commons debate, it is a vote on this. We know that Keir Starmer has said that if he was in power, that he thinks it's possible if it came through as a private member's bill by a backbench MP, then if he was Prime Minister, he would give time for that to go through and for MPs to get a free vote on it. We've heard less from the government on what exactly they would do, but it does feel it's another one of these issues totally different from the post office issue. Sure. But it does feel like an issue that the public seem to be more and more behind it. Definitely. We did some opinion polling in the Mirror last week, and it did show that an overwhelming majority did now want to see the law changed.
I mean, when I was Public Health Minister, I'd just been appointed, and it was a classic question from a political journalist. They said, what do you think about assisted suicide? Because it was big in the news because there was somebody who'd very bravely gone to court to try to challenge the existing law. And I said, well, I think it's outrageous that people feel that they've got to go to Switzerland. I'm all in favour of assisted dying and all the rest of it. And it made the front page, and I got into a bit of trouble for it. But anyway, now I was, I think that shows how... And we did have a big debate in Parliament and before 2015, and it is meaningless without a vote, and it's got to be on a meaningful motion. But it's changed. So then people like me were just seen as being very much on the fringe. And I think, as John says, I mean, I know your polling shows it as well. I think people are coming around to this, is that there must be a better way to deal with end of life. And if people want to end their life, they should have the right to do it with dignity and not have to go off to Switzerland.
And not with the fear that their relations are going to face any sort of legal problems.
Exactly. And isn't she just the most wonderful woman?
I guess having such a loved figure talk about this...
Because all her life she's campaigned for other people. And with huge success. She is just remarkable.
Let's go to the Financial Times now. Front page there, totally different story. Politics, American politics. Republican voters overwhelmingly see Trump as the best shepherd of economy. Of course, not just an election year here, but in the US as well. And it does look like Trump is definitely in with a shot.
It does. It just seems that no one else in the Republican field is anywhere close to him. And we are getting to the point now where it's starting to get important. I think the Iowa caucuses start a week from today or possibly tomorrow. And you just look at the polling on the economy, he's just way ahead of anyone else. I think 67% of people in this poll said that they thought Trump would be great at dealing with the economy, compared to 8% who said Nikki Haley, who was in second place behind him. I mean, that is a big gulf between that, and it's difficult to see how you really do catch up.
It has to be said that if no other realistic or probable candidate has emerged for the Republicans, it hasn't for the Democrats as well, and they're running out of time if they want to field someone other than Biden.
Well, they've got to field Biden. They haven't got anybody else. And, of course, he is the president. And poor old Kamala Harris never really stepped up, because I think we all thought when Biden got elected that she would be his successor. But that's just not worked out. But I'm sorry, this is so deeply depressing, because Trump is going to be the candidate and he can stand a good chance of winning.
We've got 90 seconds. Let's go to the front page of the Daily Mirror. Idris Elba, and the headline for the Daily Mirror: "Together we must end this horror." And he is talking about youth knife crime. What specifically is he talking about?
Yeah, so this is a campaign that he's launching tomorrow when MPs return to Parliament after their Christmas break. They're going to be 247 sets of clothing folding up, and they represent everyone who got killed by knife crime in the last year alone. And so that is quite a stark figure, quite a moving way to campaign on the issue.
And again, it shows how, you know, you get someone in the public eye.
I think my concern is that we have been here before with these, you know, full credit to him and the Mirror for doing this. I don't know what the answer is, but we have to do something about it, because it's literally killing people. Young people as well.
Yeah.
Heartbreaking stuff. It's got to stop.
We have 30 seconds for something, I don't know whether it's a lighter story, but let's take a look at it anyway. Front page of the Daily Star. Oh, snowballs, big freeze is on the way. What do you think?
Well, the floods have been pretty grim for a lot of people. I mean, I suppose some of those farmers up in North Notts whose fields are completely flooded will be able to turn them into ice rinks now. But in all seriousness, you know, we've had the flooding. It is really serious for a lot of people, and now we're going to get a big freeze.
Absolutely. Coming
Snowballs.
Scandinavia.
From an Arctic blast. Must be serious.